Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Thursday, July 20th, 2023. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, including my $19 rundown best bet, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games for Thursday in Major League Baseball. First up, it's the Atlanta Braves taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Zach Gallen and Spencer Strider are your starters. And I think there's some uncertainties in the Atlanta Braves right now, especially with their pitching staff, which, the offense is still done fine, but the bullpen and the starting pitchers have struggled a little bit as of late. We saw that in that White Sox series. We saw it in the first game of this series against the D-backs, 16-13 final score. One of the best games of the season so far, and, just a back-and-forth offensive showdown. Both teams had significant leads, but neither team was able to hold those leads until the very end for Arizona. But for me, both these starters are having good seasons, but neither of them are really in the best of form going into this outing. Zach Gallen hasn't been great on the road this year. He struggled in his last outing against Toronto. 3 runs allowed, 3 walks in 5 innings. Strider, his last start against the White Sox, he took the loss, 6 innings, 5 runs, 8 base hits, and a homer in a 6-5 White Sox win. Both these starting pitchers have faced the opposition. Both of those starts were quality starts officially, but I think both of these guys would say it wasn't their best outing. Strider had some control issues against the D-backs. He walked 4 batters, gave up a home run in a 5-2 Braves win, but Gallen, 6 innings, 2 runs, looks good on paper, but gave up 9 base hits, gave up a home run in the end in an 8-5 Braves win. For me, I think we're going to see a close game here. Like I said, there's some uncertainties with the Atlanta Braves right now, so I'm leaning towards Arizona plus the 1.5 runs, but it should be a really entertaining game again. Next up, it's the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Corbin Burnes and Taijuan Walker are your starters. We got 2 starting pitchers in pretty good form as of late. Taijuan Walker in 4 of his last 5 outings, 2 earned runs or fewer allowed. Corbin Burnes in his last 3 starts, 2 earned runs or fewer, and racking up the strikeouts as of late. He's got 19 strikeouts in his last 12 innings. When you look at both of these teams offensively in the last 30 days against right-handed pitchers, neither of them doing really too well. The Brewers are ranked 28th in baseball in isolated power. The Phillies are 16th, so a little bit below league average. The Phillies and team OPS are 17th against righties. The Brewers are 25th. Give me the under here. It looks like a pretty good pitcher's duel between Burnes and Walker. Next up, it's the San Francisco Giants taking on the Cincinnati Reds. Alex Cobb and Andrew Abbott are your starters. It's not easy taking an under in a Great American Ballpark game, but I like the under in the first 5 innings in this one. Alex Cobb, in his career at Great American Ballpark, 13 innings, a 1.38 ERA. On the other side, Andrew Abbott has a pretty beneficial matchup here, even though Abbott, as of late, had some issues with the home run ball, giving up 4 homers in his last 10 innings. Those were both against the Milwaukee Brewers, who have seen a lot of Andrew Abbott this year, while the Giants have seen none of Andrew Abbott, and they've struggled against lefties. In the last 30 days, San Francisco's 23rd in isolated power and 27th in team OPS against left-handed pitchers. Give me the under in the first 5 innings. I think when the bullpens make their way into the game, we may see some more action offensively, but give me the under in the first 5. Next up, we see the San Diego Padres taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. Blake Snell and Chris Bassett are your starters. The Blue Jays have not had a great season against left-handed pitchers, especially in the power department, where, isolated power-wise, this team has been near the bottom of the league against lefties basically all year. And in the last 30 days, they are 24th in baseball in isolated power. Team OPS numbers right around league average, a little bit below league average, with a high strikeout rate of 25.1% to go with it. We know Blake Snell is a strikeout-dependent starter. He's been one of the best starting pitchers in baseball over the last 2 months or so. Another shutout performance against Philadelphia in his last outing. 5 innings, shutout, 7 strikeouts, 3 walks. His control is always a little bit of a problem, but the Toronto Blue Jays walk percentage against lefties hasn't been great, hasn't been terrible, 8.4%. I think Snell pitches well, goes 5-6 good innings here. Chris Bassett on the other side has been very inconsistent this year. He's been better at Rogers Center than he has been on the road, but he faces a very tough Padres lineup right now, who is, believe it or not, even though the Padres have been a disappointment, they're hitting right-handed pitchers very well. We saw him get to Alek Manoah in the first game of this series. I like their chances to get to Chris Bassett just enough to win this game in the end. The Padres bullpen hasn't been the best lately, but they still have one of the best closing pitchers in the league in Josh Hader. You can take the Padres in the first 5 innings if you just want to isolate this game to Blake Snell, but I'm willing to take the Padres in the full game as well on the money line. Next up, we see the Chicago White Sox taking on the New York Mets. We're going to see Michael Kopech for Chicago, and making his Mets and season debut is Jose Quintana, a former member of the Chicago White Sox. He spent his most time in his career with with the White Sox. And, Quintana struggled in the minor league rehab outings. I am a little bit concerned with this game in this matchup and going forward. The White Sox, like we've mentioned plenty of times last year and the years prior, were one of the best lineups in baseball against lefties. This year, not so much, but I still think Chicago will be able to get to Quintana early on, and this Mets bullpen's also not been great in the last 30 days or so when you look at the expected numbers and even the ERA. New York got a 5.15 SIERA, which is the highest in baseball in the last month, even steeper than teams like the Washington Nationals. So I do worry about the Mets pitching staff in this game. We even saw in the first game of this series, the Mets jumped out to a huge lead early on, but they were starting to give up a lot of runs in the later innings, and that one almost blew the lead entirely in an 11-10 Mets win. On the other side, Michael Kopech not really in the best of form. We saw him struggle at the beginning of 2023, then he sharpened up, and now lately, his control's been a big problem. His last 4 2/3 innings, 11 walks allowed. I can't trust you against the New York Mets lineup that, like I mentioned, scored a lot of runs early in the first game of this series and has hit righties very well in the last month or so, where they're top 10 in baseball in OPS and isolated power. Give me the over here in Chicago, New York. Next up, we see the Detroit Tigers taking on the Kansas City Royals. Michael Lorenzen going for Detroit, no official starter for KC. Even if the Royals go with a starting pitcher or a spot starter in this game, it's fair to say they're going to have to rely on that bullpen for quite a few innings in this one, and that's my big concern with Kansas City is we've seen this bullpen struggle all year long, and we've seen them struggle in this series. The first game of the series, the Royals had a 2-0 lead virtually the whole way. They blow it in the end, lose 3-2 the final score. The second game of this series, we see KC get 2 5-run leads, a 7-2 lead and an 11-6 lead. The final score 11-10 in a game where the Tigers had the tying run at third base in the later innings. So I don't trust this Royals bullpen. Michael Lorenzen is in good form going into the start. His last 2 games, 6-2 shutout baseball against the Mariners, and then 5-inning shutout baseball against the A's. Give me the Detroit Tigers here on the run line, laying the 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the Minnesota Twins taking on the Seattle Mariners. Pablo Lopez and George Kirby are your starters. Tough game for me here. Both starting pitchers did not pitch well in their last starts. Lopez, even though the Twins got the win in the end, it was 5 2/3, 8 base hits, and 7 earned runs with 2 home runs to go with it against the A's of all teams. And then George Kirby against the Detroit Tigers, another weak lineup. He gives up in 5 innings, 8 base hits, 6 earned runs, and 2 home runs as well. Overall, I think George Kirby's had the better season. I also trust him a little bit more going forward. He's really efficient, doesn't really walk a lot of guys. He can miss some bats, but he keeps the ball on the ground for the most part. He hasn't really gotten hurt too much by the home run ball. I think he pitches well in this game, but I also think the Mariners have the better bullpen. So if this is a close game late, I'd give the edge to Seattle. Give me the Seattle Mariners here on the money line at T-Mobile Park. Next up, it's a big-time AL East matchup between the Baltimore Orioles and the Tampa Bay Rays. Kyle Gibson and Tyler Glasnow are your starters. I think the Rays bullpen's made a lot of improvements in the last month or so. In the last 30 days, Tampa Bay has the 6th best SIERA in the bullpen with a 3.26 ERA to go with it. So in a matchup like this, where maybe 2 months ago I would say just take Tampa Bay in the first 5 innings because I don't trust this bullpen, now I'm actually comfortable taking the Rays in the full game on the money line. And the Orioles have played great against the Rays this year. They're 3-2 so far on the season. But this matchup, Kyle Gibson, 4.77 ERA on the year. He's been better on the road, but he's coming off a really bad outing against the Marlins where he went 5 1/3, 5 earned runs, 9 base hits. The Orioles won the game in the end because they backed him up offensively, but facing Tyler Glasnow here, who earned a ton of strikeouts, 71 Ks in 47 2/3 innings. His concern is the home run ball and the control for Glasnow, but really in his last 5 outings, 2 or fewer walks in all 5 of those starts. I think he pitches well in this game. I think the Rays bats back him up. I think the Rays bullpen's good enough here as well. So give me the Tampa Bay Rays on the money line at Tropicana Field. Next over, it's the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Chicago Cubs in the NL Central. Steven Matz and Marcus Stroman are your starters. I don't love backing Steven Matz when he's in the starting pitching role. He struggled at the beginning of the season in the rotation. The Cardinals moved him to the bullpen. He did a little bit better there, but now back in the starting rotation. We saw his last start against the Nationals, 4 1/3 innings, 4 earned runs, 2 home runs as well. Facing a Cubs team that's been decent against lefties as of late with a 717 team OPS. Marcus Stroman, I think, is the much better starting pitcher in this matchup. Could be on the move at the MLB trade deadline. Many teams would like to have him on their roster in terms of making a playoff run, but Stroman's last start, 6 innings, 1 run, quality start for the Cubs and a 10-4 win. I think he pitches well here and gets the Cubs another victory. Give me Chicago on the money line in this one. Next up, we see the final game for Thursday's card in Major League Baseball. The Houston Astros and the Oakland Athletics. Hogan Harris and J.P. France are your starters. Now, this is a great matchup for the Houston Astros, but a terrible spot. I mean, this team's been all over the place in the last week or so. They went from Los Angeles in the Pacific time zone to Colorado in the Mountain time zone, back to California here for another game, another series with the Oakland A's. They go from Coors Field to Oakland with no days off in between. We know that really affects hitters, especially, the first game back from a Coors Field series. That's why the Rockies have really bad road records almost every single year and decent home records when they're playing at Coors Field. So I think that the spot is horrible for the Astros, but the matchup, is so beneficial. When you look at J.P. France pitching so well on the road this year with a 2.18 ERA, I think he pitches well in this game. The question I would have is, are the Astros going to be able to get to Hogan Harris? Most teams have been. Most teams haven't had to play a Coors Field series first, but last 4 games, Hogan Harris has given up 4 earned runs or more in all 4 of those appearances. Those were all, big blowout wins for the opposition, 7-3, 10-4, 9-0, 10-7. So the Astros have a really good matchup. They don't strike out much against lefties. They hit lefties very, very well in general. I think they'll be able to get to Hogan Harris for enough runs to win and cover this run line in the end. The only thing holding me back is the fact that this is a really brutal spot. So I'm going to lay the 2.5 runs here with the Houston Astros on the road. And that's it. Those are the games for Thursday in baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.